You think your thoughts are yours. That's the first lie. Every morning, you wake up and the same voice starts talking. It tells you who you are, what you're afraid of, what you'll never have, what you don't deserve. It whispers the same doubts, repeats the same scripts, plays the same failures on loop until they feel like prophecy. And you believe it because it sounds like you. But here's the truth no one prepared you for. Most of the thoughts running through your mind right now weren't created by you. They were installed, inherited, absorbed from people who were just as confused as you are. They came from a parent's fear, a teacher's limitation, a culture's obsession with safety and smallness. You've been thinking someone else's thought your entire life and calling it identity. And the cost is everything. The relationship you didn't pursue because your mind said you weren't enough. The business you didn't start because a voice told you it was too risky. The version of yourself you abandoned because your thoughts convinced you it was impossible. Your mind has been running the show, and the show has been a tragedy. But here's what changes everything. The moment you realize your thoughts are not you, you take back the power. The moment you see that you are not the voice, you are the one listening to it, the entire game shifts. This audiobook is not about positive thinking. It's not about affirmations or pretending your pain doesn't exist. This is about something far more dangerous and far more real. This is about taking full control of the most powerful force in your life, your mind. Because when you control your thoughts, you don't just change your mood, you change your identity, your relationships, your income, your legacy. You change your life. And it starts right now. Chapter 1. The Tyrant You Never Saw. You've been at war your whole life and you didn't even know it. Not with the world, not with other people, with yourself. Every single day, there's a battle happening inside your skull. Thoughts firing like bullets, memories ambushing you at random, fears whispering strategies of retreat, desires screaming for attention. And you, caught in the crossfire, trying to survive. Most people never realize they're in a war. They think the chaos is normal. They think everyone walks around with a mind that never shuts up, that criticizes every decision, that replays every embarrassment from 15 years ago at 3 in the morning. They think it's just part of being human. But it's not. It's the result of living unconsciously, of letting your mind run on autopilot, programmed by every trauma, every rejection, every careless word someone said to you when you were too young to know better. Your mind isn't trying to hurt you. It's trying to protect you. But it's using outdated maps. It's operating from a version of you that no longer exists. The kid who got laughed at in 3rd grade, the teenager who got their heart broken, the young adult who failed and swore they'd never try again. Your thoughts are still fighting battles that ended years ago, and they're winning. Because you're not fighting back, you're surrendering. Every time you believe the thought that says you're not smart enough, you surrender. Every time you accept the anxiety as truth instead of noise, you surrender. Every time you let your mind talk you out of the life you want, you hand over your power. And the tyrant grows stronger. Here's what most people don't understand. Your thoughts are not facts. They're interpretations, stories, guesses. Your mind takes incomplete data and spins it into a narrative, and that narrative becomes your reality. Someone doesn't text you back. Your mind says, they don't care about you. You make a mistake at work. Your mind says, you're not good at this. You'll never succeed. You look in the mirror. Your mind says, you're not attractive. No one will want you. None of that is true, but you believe it. And belief shapes behavior. Behavior shapes results. Results confirm belief. It's a loop, a prison. And the bars are made of thoughts you never questioned.
Dr. Fred Luskin at Stanford University found that the average person has around 60,000 thoughts per day. You know how many of those are new? Less than 5%. The rest, recycled, repeated, the same mental scripts running on autopilot. You're not thinking. You're remembering. You're replaying. And here's the brutal part. Most of those thoughts are negative because your brain is wired for survival, not happiness. It's designed to scan for threats, to remember pain, to keep you safe by keeping you small. So your mind becomes a tyrant that convinces you it's a protector. It tells you not to take the risks because you might fail, not to speak up because you might be judged, not to dream too big because disappointment hurts. And you listen because you think that voice is you. But it's not. You are not your thoughts. You are the one aware of them. You are the space in which they appear. And the moment you realize that, everything changes.
Imagine standing in a train station. Thoughts are the trains. They come and go. Some are loud, some are fast, some are filled with passengers screaming terrible things. But you don't have to get on the train. You can watch it pass. You can stand on the platform and let it go. That's the first act of rebellion, not controlling what you think, but choosing what you believe. Because here's the truth. You can't stop thoughts from coming, but you can stop giving them power. You can't silence the voice, but you can stop obeying it. Right now, your mind is telling you something. Maybe it's doubt. Maybe it's fear. Maybe it's that familiar whisper that says, "This won't work for you." Notice it. Don't fight it. Don't shame it. Just see it for what it is. A thought. Not truth, not destiny. Just noise. And noise has no power unless you turn up the volume. You've spent your whole life believing that you are what you think. That if your mind says you're broken, you must be broken. If it says you're unworthy, you must be unworthy. But you're not. You're the sky. Thoughts are the weather, and no storm lasts forever. The tyrant you never saw is the belief that you have no choice, that your thoughts control you, that your past defines your future, that the voice in your head gets the final say. But you do have a choice, and it starts with awareness. You can't change what you can't see, so the first step isn't control, it's clarity. It's learning to watch your mind instead of becoming it, to observe the patterns, to name the lies, to catch yourself in the act of believing something that's destroying you. This is not weakness. This is power. And in the next chapter, we're going deeper. Because once you see the tyrant, you need to understand how it built its kingdom. You need to see the architecture of the prison, the invisible structure that keeps you trapped. Because you can't break out of a cage you don't even know you're in.
Chapter 2. The Architecture of Imprisonment. Your mind is a construction site, but you didn't design the building. You inherited the blueprints. Every belief you have, every automatic thought, every reaction you can't seem to control, it was all built, brick by brick, moment by moment, by parents who meant well but carried their own wounds, by teachers who rewarded compliance and punished curiosity, by a world that needed you to fit in, not stand out. And now, you're living in a structure you never agreed to, a mental prison disguised as protection. Let me show you how it was built. You were born without fear, without shame, without the voice that tells you you're not enough. You cried when you were hungry. You laughed when you felt joy. You reached for what you wanted without asking permission. You were free. But freedom is dangerous. So the world went to work on you. Every time you expressed emotion and were told to stop, a brick was laid. Every time you failed and were shamed instead of supported, another brick. Every time you were told to be realistic, to lower your expectations, to stop dreaming so loud, more bricks. Layer by layer, your mind learned to protect you by limiting you. It learned that vulnerability gets punished, that mistakes mean you're broken, that wanting more makes you greedy, that being yourself invites rejection. So, it built walls, thick ones. Walls made of thoughts designed to keep you safe by keeping you small. And here's the trap. You don't see the walls anymore. You see the world through them. You think the limits are real. You think the fear is truth. You think the voice that says you can't is wisdom. But it's not. It's programming. And every program can be rewritten. Dr. Bruce Lipton, a cellular biologist, found that 95% of your behavior is controlled by subconscious programming formed before the age of 7. 95%. That means most of your decisions, reactions, and beliefs aren't coming from conscious thought. They're coming from patterns installed when you were too young to question them. You're not living your life. You're living a script. And the script is old, outdated, written by people who didn't know what you were capable of. This is the architecture of imprisonment, not chains, not walls, but beliefs. Invisible structures that feel like truth because you've never examined them. Let me name a few. See if they sound familiar. I'm not the kind of person who people like me don't get to. If I try and fail, I'll look stupid. I have to work twice as hard to be half as good. I can't trust myself. These aren't truths. They're bricks. And every time you repeat them, you reinforce the prison. But here's what happens when you start to see the architecture. You realize you're not trapped. You're just convinced you are. There's a story about an elephant. When it's young, trainers tie it to a post with a thick rope. The elephant pulls and pulls, but it can't break free. Eventually, it stops trying. Years later, that same elephant, now massive, strong enough to uproot trees, can be held by a thin piece of string. Not because it's not strong enough to break free, but because it learned, long ago, that escape is impossible. You are that elephant. And the string is your thoughts.
Right now, you're being held in place by beliefs that have no power except the power you give them. You're not pursuing the relationship because a thought says you'll be rejected. You're not starting the business because a thought says you'll fail. You're not speaking your truth because a thought says no one cares. But thoughts are not walls. They're suggestions. And you can say no. The architecture of imprisonment has 3 core pillars. Once you see them, you can begin to dismantle them. Pillar 1. The story of deficiency. This is the belief that something is fundamentally wrong with you, that you're broken, not enough, too much, different in a way that disqualifies you from love, success, or belonging. This story was built early, maybe by a parent who withheld approval, a peer who made you feel invisible, a culture that told you your body, your voice, your dreams were wrong. And now that story runs your life. You sabotage relationships before they can reject you. You play small so you won't be exposed. You achieve and achieve and achieve, but it never feels like enough. Because the story isn't about what you do, it's about who you are. And as long as you believe it, nothing you accomplish will ever silence the voice. Pillar 2. The illusion of control. This is the belief that if you just think hard enough, plan well enough, avoid enough risk, you can prevent pain. So you overthink. You rehearse conversations that will never happen. You create backup plans for backup plans. You try to predict every outcome and prepare for every disaster. But control is a myth, and the obsession with it is exhausting. Life is unpredictable. People will disappoint you, plans will fall apart, and no amount of mental rehearsal will change that. The illusion of control keeps you stuck because it convinces you that the problem is outside you. That if you could just fix the circumstances, manage the variables, avoid the triggers, then you'd be okay. But you can't control life. You can only control how you respond. And that starts with letting go of the need to predict, manage, and prevent everything. Pillar 3. The fear of the unknown. This is the belief that what you don't know will hurt you, that change is dangerous, that the unfamiliar is a threat. So you stay in the relationship that drains you, the job that numbs you, the city that feels like a cage, not because it's good, but because it's known. Your mind would rather suffer in certainty than risk freedom in uncertainty. But growth lives in the unknown. Transformation happens when you step into the space your mind has labeled dangerous and discover it was just different. These 3 pillars, deficiency, control, and fear, hold up the prison, and every thought that limits you is built on one of them. So, how do you dismantle it? Not by force, not by fighting every thought, but by questioning the foundation. When the voice says, "You're not enough," ask, "Who decided that? Where did I learn this? Is this actually true, or is this a story I inherited?" When the voice says, "You need to control this," ask, "What am I really afraid of? What happens if I let go?" When the voice says, "Don't risk it," ask, "What's the cost of staying here? What life am I trading for safety?" You don't need to have all the answers. You just need to stop accepting the thoughts as gospel. Because the moment you question the architecture, you weaken it. The moment you see the walls as constructs instead of truth, they start to crack. And that's when the real work begins. You've seen the tyrant, you've named the structure, now it's time to wake up the part of you that's been asleep this whole time. The observer, the witness, the you beneath the noise. And that's where we're going next.
Chapter 3. When the observer awakens. There's a version of you that has never been wounded. It's never been rejected, never failed, never absorbed the shame or the fear or the limiting beliefs that run your life. It exists beneath all of that, quiet, steady, watching. Most people never meet it. They live their entire lives identified with the noise. They think they are the anxiety, the anger, the doubt, the endless mental chatter that narrates every moment. But you're not. You're the one who notices the anxiety, the one aware of the anger, the space in which all of it appears and disappears. You are the observer. And when the observer awakens, everything changes. Right now, as you listen to these words, there are thoughts moving through your mind. Maybe you're analyzing what you're hearing. Maybe you're remembering something from your past. Maybe you're planning what you'll do later. But here's the question that breaks everything open. Who is aware of those thoughts? Not the thoughts themselves. They come and go. They contradict each other. They change based on mood, circumstance, blood sugar. There's something else, something constant, something that's been watching your entire life unfold from behind your eyes. That's you. Not the story, not the identity, not the collection of memories and beliefs and fears. You are awareness itself. And this isn't philosophy. This is freedom. Because the moment you realize you are not your thoughts, you stop being controlled by them. You stop believing every fear. You stop obeying every impulse. You stop living like a passenger in your own life. You take the wheel. Dr. Dan Siegel, a clinical professor of psychiatry at UCLA, developed a concept he calls mindsight. It's the ability to observe your own mental processes without getting swept away by them.
to see your thoughts and emotions as events in consciousness, not definitions of who you are. He found that people who developed this capacity experienced less anxiety, greater emotional regulation, and a deeper sense of peace. Not because their circumstances changed, but because their relationship to their inner experience changed. They stopped being the storm, they became the sky. And you can do the same. But first, you need to understand why you forgot. When you were a child, you lived mostly as the observer. You watched the world with curiosity. You felt emotions fully, then let them pass. You didn't hold grudges or replay conversations or worry about the future. You were present. But the world couldn't let you stay that way because presence doesn't follow rules. It doesn't obey. It doesn't perform. So you were taught to think, to analyze, to judge, to compare. You were rewarded for being in your head and punished for being in your body. You learned that thinking equals intelligence, that constant mental activity equals productivity, that if you're not worrying, you're not prepared. And slowly, you stopped being the observer. You became the thoughts. You fused with them until there was no separation. Now, when a thought says, "I'm a failure," you don't hear it as a thought. You hear it as truth. You don't say, "I'm having the thought that I'm a failure." You say, "I am a failure." And that's the trap. Because when you are the thought, you have no power over it. It runs you. It defines you. It shapes every choice you make. But when you observe the thought, you see it for what it is: a mental event, temporary, subjective, often inaccurate, and you get to choose whether or not to believe it. This is the awakening. Not enlightenment, not transcendence, just the simple, radical act of stepping back and watching. Let me show you how. Right now, bring your attention to your breathing. Don't change it, just notice it. The rise and fall of your chest, the cool air entering your nostrils, the warm air leaving. As you do this, thoughts will come. Plans, memories, judgment about whether you're doing this right. Let them come. Don't push them away, don't fight them, just notice them, like clouds passing through the sky. And as you notice, ask yourself, who is noticing? Not the thoughts, not the breath, something else, something vast and still and always here. That's you, the real you. And the more time you spend there, the less power the noise has. Here's what happens when the observer awakens. You stop taking everything personally because you realize that the voice in your head is not an authority, it's a pattern, a habit, a collection of outdated fears trying to keep you safe. You stop reacting from emotion because you see the emotion as something you're experiencing, not something you are. You feel the anger without becoming the anger. You notice the fear without being paralyzed by it. You stop needing to control everything because you understand that thoughts and emotions are like weather. They come, they go, and you don't need to fix them or fight them. You just need to let them move through you. And most importantly, you reclaim your power. Because when you're identified with your thoughts, you're at their mercy. When you observe them, you're free. This doesn't mean you ignore your thoughts. It means you stop treating them like commandments. A thought says, "You'll never be successful." The old you, believe it, felt the weight of it, let it stop you. The awakened you hears it and thinks, "Interesting. That's the old fear talking. What if it's wrong?" A thought says, "They don't like you." The old you spiraled, analyzed every interaction, withdrew to avoid rejection. The awakened you notices it and thinks, "That's an assumption, not a fact. I don't actually know what they think." This is not denial, this is discernment. You're not pretending the thoughts don't exist, you're refusing to let them run your life. And here's the most powerful part. The more you practice observing, the quieter the noise becomes. Not because you're suppressing it, but because thoughts need your attention to survive. They need you to believe them, engage with them, argue with them. When you stop feeding them, they lose power. Think of your mind like a stage. For your whole life, there's been a performer on that stage. Loud, dramatic, demanding all your attention. The performer is your thinking mind. It narrates, it judges, it spins stories. And you've been sitting in the audience, completely absorbed. You forgot you could leave. You forgot you could turn off the spotlight. You forgot that you're not the performer. You're the theater. The observer is the part of you that owns the whole space, the stage, the audience, the silence before the show and after it ends. And when you remember that, the performance doesn't stop, but it stops controlling you. The performer can rant about failure, and you can acknowledge it without believing it. The performer can scream about danger, and you can assess the situation calmly. The performer can tell the same old story, and you can choose to write a new one. This is not about transcending your humanity, it's about reclaiming it. You're not trying to become someone who never has negative thoughts. You're becoming someone who doesn't believe every thought that crosses our mind. And that changes everything. Because your thoughts create your emotions. Your emotions drive your actions. Your actions shape your life. When you change your relationship to your thoughts, you change the trajectory of your entire existence. The observer doesn't need to fight. It doesn't need to fix. It just needs to see. And in the seeing, the prison starts to dissolve. You've lived so long in the tyranny of the mind that this might feel unfamiliar, even uncomfortable. Your thoughts will tell you this is pointless, that you're wasting your time, that real change requires more effort, more struggle. Let them talk. You don't have to convince them, you just have to stop obeying them. The observer isn't loud, it doesn't argue, it doesn't justify. It simply is. And the more you rest there, the more you realize you've been free this whole time. You just forgot. But now you're starting to remember. And once the observer awakens, the next step isn't passive watching. It's active rebellion. Because seeing the prison is the first step. But breaking out requires something more. It requires you to revolt against the patterns that have run your life, to interrupt the loops, to choose differently, even when everything in you screams to stay the same. That's where we're going next. The revolt against repetition.
Chapter 4. The Revolt Against Repetition. You are a creature of patterns. Your brain loves them, craves them, builds entire highways of neural connections to make sure you keep repeating the same thoughts, the same behaviors, the same reactions. Because patterns are efficient. They save energy. They keep you safe. But they also keep you stuck. Right now, you're running the same mental programs you ran yesterday, and the day before, and the year before. You're reacting to stress the same way, sabotaging relationships in the same way, avoiding risk in the same way. Not because you want to, but because repetition is the default setting of the human mind. And if you want to change your life, you have to revolt against it. This is not about willpower. It's about awareness, because you can't change a pattern you don't see. And most of your patterns are invisible. They're so automatic, so deeply wired that they feel like who you are. But they're not. They're just what you've practiced. Here's how it works. Every thought you think creates a neural pathway in your brain, a tiny electrical trail. The first time you think a thought, the pathway is weak, thin, easy to ignore. But the second time you think it, the pathway strengthens. The third time, it gets stronger. The 100th time, the 1,000th time, it becomes a superhighway. And your brain loves superhighways because they're fast, automatic, efficient. So
When a situation triggers you, your brain doesn't evaluate. It doesn't pause. It just sends the signal down the familiar path. Someone criticizes you, and instantly you feel shame. Not because shame is the only response, but because shame is the highway. You face a challenge, and instantly you feel fear. Not because the challenge is necessarily dangerous, but because fear is the pattern. You want something, and instantly you feel unworthy. Not because you are unworthy, but because unworthiness is the loop you've been running for years. Dr. Joe Dispenza, a neuroscientist and researcher, says that by the time you're 35 years old, 95% of who you are is a set of memorized behaviors, automatic emotional reactions, and hardwired habits. 95%! That means only 5% of you is conscious, present, choosing in real time. The rest, autopilot. And autopilot doesn't create change. It creates repetition. So if you want a different life, you need to interrupt the patterns. You need to catch yourself in the act of repeating and choose something else. This is the revolt. And it starts with one simple question. What am I doing right now that I've done 1,000 times before? Maybe it's the way you respond when someone disappoints you. You shut down, you pull away, you build walls. Maybe it's the way you handle stress. You overeat, you numb out, you spiral into worst-case scenarios. Maybe it's the way you talk to yourself. Harsh, critical, relentlessly focused on what's wrong. These patterns feel like truth, but they're just habits, learned responses, and anything learned can be unlearned. But here's the hard part. Your brain will resist because change is expensive. It requires energy, attention, effort, and your brain's primary job is to conserve resources. So the moment you try to do something different, your mind will flood you with reasons to stop. This won't work. You've tried before and failed. Why bother? You'll just go back to the old way. These thoughts aren't prophecy. They're protection. Your brain is trying to pull you back to the familiar because the familiar feels safe, even if the familiar is killing you. This is why most people never change. Not because they don't want to, but because the discomfort of breaking a pattern feels worse than the pain of staying stuck. The known suffering beats the unknown possibility. But you're not most people, because you're here, you're listening, you're willing to see the pattern instead of being run by it. And that willingness is the crack in the foundation. Let me give you a framework, a way to interrupt the loop before it runs you. It's called the 4-second revolt. Step 1, catch the trigger. Something happens. Someone says something. You feel a familiar emotion rising. This is the moment, the split second before the pattern takes over. Most people miss it. They're already in the reaction before they realize what's happening. But you're training yourself to notice, to feel the shift, to recognize the familiar pull.
Step 2, name the pattern. Out loud or in your mind, say it. This is the shutdown pattern. This is the shame spiral. This is the fear response. Naming it creates distance. It reminds you that this is a pattern, not truth. A habit, not identity. Step 3, pause. 4 seconds. That's all you need. 4 seconds to disrupt the automation. Breathe. Feel your feet on the ground. Notice the space between the trigger and the reaction. In that space, you have power. Step 4, choose differently. Not perfectly, not heroically, just differently. If the pattern is shut down, choose to stay present for 10 more seconds. If the pattern is shame, choose to speak one kind word to yourself. If the pattern is fear, choose to take one small action anyway. You're not trying to erase the pattern in one moment. You're weakening it. You're building a new pathway. And every time you choose differently, that new pathway gets a little stronger. This is how change happens. Not in massive leaps, but in tiny revolts. One choice, one pause, one moment of doing something your brain didn't expect. And the more you practice, the old pattern loses its grip. Think of it like this. The pattern is a train on a track. For years, it's been running the same route, the same stations, the same destination. But now you're laying new track. At first, it's rough. The train doesn't want to go there. It feels wrong, uncomfortable. But you keep laying it, one choice at a time, one pause at a time. And eventually, the new track becomes the preferred route. Not because the old track is gone, it's still there. It will always be there. But it's no longer the only option. Here's what people get wrong about breaking patterns. They think they need to feel different before they act different. They wait for motivation, for confidence, for the fear to go away. But that's backwards. You don't feel your way into a new pattern. You act your way into it. You take the action even though you feel the old pull, even though your mind is screaming at you to stop, even though every cell in your body wants to go back to what's familiar. And then, after you act, the feeling starts to shift, because your brain learns through experience, not intention. You can tell yourself 1,000 times that you're worthy, but if you keep choosing patterns that reinforce unworthiness, your brain won't believe you. But the moment you act like someone who is worthy, by setting a boundary, by speaking up, by pursuing what you want, your brain takes note. And slowly, the identity shifts. This is not fake it till you make it. This is act until you become. You're not pretending to be different, you're practicing being different. And practice rewires the brain. Neuroscientists call it neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself, to form new connections, to change structure based on experience. Your brain is not fixed. Your patterns are not permanent. You are not sentenced to repeat the past. But you have to actively choose the new path over and over until it becomes the default. And here's the beautiful part. Every time you revolt against the pattern, you prove to yourself that you're not powerless. You prove that the voice doesn't control you, that the fear doesn't own you, that the past doesn't define you. You reclaim a piece of your freedom. And that freedom compounds. One choice leads to another. One pause creates space for the next. One small act of rebellion becomes a revolution. But you have to start. You have to catch the pattern in motion and dare to do something different. Even if it's messy, even if it's imperfect, even if you fall back into the old way 100 times. Because this isn't about perfection. It's about direction. You're not trying to never repeat a pattern again. You're trying to repeat it less, to catch it faster, to choose differently more often. And every time you do, the pattern weakens, the new way strengthens, and your life begins to change. Not someday, not when you feel ready, now. In the next moment you're triggered, in the next wave of fear, in the next pull toward the familiar. That's your moment. That's your revolt. And the more you practice it, the more you realize something profound. You were never the pattern. You were always the one who could choose. You just forgot. But now you're remembering. And once you start interrupting the loops, once you start acting from awareness instead of automation, you discover something else. Something quieter, deeper, more powerful than any thought. Silence. And that's what we're going next.
Chapter 5. Silence is not empty. You're afraid of silence. You don't think you are,
But watch what you do the moment you're alone with nothing to distract you. You reach for your phone. You turn on music. You fill the space with noise, with content, with anything that keeps you from hearing what's underneath. Because silence feels dangerous. It feels like emptiness, like loneliness, like the void where all your fears live, waiting to devour you. But that's the lie. Silence is not empty. It's full, full of clarity, full of truth, full of the wisdom you've been drowning out with constant mental noise. And the moment you stop running from it, the moment you let yourself sit in it, everything you've been searching for reveals itself. Most people live their entire lives at maximum volume. Thoughts blaring, notifications pinging, entertainment streaming, the world shouting at them from every direction. And they think that's normal. They think that's life. But it's not life. It's avoidance. Because when you're constantly consuming, constantly distracted, constantly busy, you never have to face yourself. You never have to ask the hard questions. You never have to feel the uncomfortable emotions. You never have to confront the patterns, the pain, the parts of yourself you've been ignoring for years. Silence forces you to face all of it. And that's why you avoid it. But here's what happens when you finally stop running. You realize that the thing you were afraid of wasn't actually in the silence. It was in you the whole time. And the noise was just keeping you from seeing it. Think about the last time you sat in complete silence. No phone, no music, no podcasts in the background, just you and the quiet. How long did you last? 30 seconds? A minute? Before the discomfort crept in and you reached for something, anything to fill the space. That discomfort is not a sign that something's wrong. It's a sign that something's right. It means you're finally getting close to what matters. Dr. Judson Brewer, a psychiatrist and neuroscientist at Brown University, has studied the brain's default mode network, the part of your brain that activates when you're not focused on the outside world. He found that when people sit in silence, when they're not distracted, this network lights up. And what does it do? It processes. It integrates. It makes sense of your experiences, your emotions, your life. But most people never give it the chance.
They keep their minds so busy that the default mode network never gets to do its job. So the unprocessed emotions pile up. The unresolved thoughts loop endlessly. The clarity they're searching for stays buried under layers of distraction. Silence is not the absence of something. It's the presence of everything you've been too busy to notice. Your intuition, your creativity, your deepest knowing. It's all there, waiting. But you have to get quiet enough to hear it. And that requires something most people aren't willing to give. Surrender. Not surrender as in giving up. Surrender as in letting go of control. Letting go of the need to fill every moment. Letting go of the belief that if you're not doing something, you're wasting time. Silence is not wasted time. It's where transformation happens. Because in the silence, you stop performing. You stop pretending. You stop running the scripts and playing the roles and managing everyone's perception of you. You just are. And in that being, you meet the real you. Not the persona, not the identity you've constructed, the essence, the part of you that exists beyond the noise. And that part, it knows exactly what you need. It knows what's true and what's a lie. It knows which relationships are draining you and which ones are feeding you. It knows what you actually want versus what you think you're supposed to want. But it can't speak over the noise. It can only whisper. And if you're never quiet, you'll never hear it. So how do you get comfortable with silence? Not by forcing it,
not by making it another thing you have to be good at. You start small. 1 minute. That's it. 1 minute of sitting with nothing. No goal, no expectation, just you and the quiet. Set a timer if you need to. Sit down, close your eyes, and let yourself be. Thoughts will come. Let them. Discomfort will rise. Let it. The urge to grab your phone, to move, to do something will surge. Notice it. Don't act on it. Just sit. And in that sitting, something shifts. At first, it's subtle. A softness, a spaciousness, a sense that maybe, just maybe, you don't have to be in constant motion to exist. Then, over time, the silence stops feeling like a void and starts feeling like home. Because it is home. It's the place you return to when the world gets too loud, when your thoughts get too heavy, when you need to remember who you are beneath all the roles and responsibilities and expectations. Silence is where you recalibrate. It's where you hear the truth your mind has been talking over, where you feel the emotions you've been avoiding, where you reconnect with the version of yourself that doesn't need to prove anything. And the more time you spend there, the less power the noise has.
You stop needing constant stimulation. You stop fearing your own thoughts. You stop running from the discomfort of just being. And in that stillness, you find something unexpected. Peace. Not the kind of peace that depends on perfect circumstances. Not the fragile peace that shatters the moment something goes wrong. Real peace. The kind that exists underneath everything. That's always been there, waiting for you to stop long enough to notice. This is not about becoming a monk. It's not about meditating for hours or retreating from the world. It's about creating pockets of silence in your life. Moments where you're not consuming, not producing, not performing, just being. Maybe it's the first 5 minutes of your morning before you check your phone. Maybe it's a walk without headphones where you just listen to your footsteps and your breath. Maybe it's sitting in your car for 60 seconds before you go inside, letting the day settle. These moments matter because they train you to tolerate your own presence, to be with yourself without needing to fix, change, or distract. And the more you practice, the more you realize you're not boring. You're not broken. You don't need to be constantly entertained or constantly busy to be valuable. You're enough. Right here, right now, in the silence. But here's the part most people resist. Silence will show you what you've been avoiding. It will surface the grief you haven't processed, the anger you suppressed, the fear you've been outrunning. And that's uncomfortable. So uncomfortable that most people will do anything to avoid it. They'll fill their calendars, they'll say yes to things they hate, they'll binge shows they don't even enjoy. Anything to keep the silence at bay. But avoidance doesn't make the pain go away. It just buries it deeper. And buried pain doesn't stay buried. It leaks. It shows up as anxiety, as irritability, as numbness, as patterns you can't seem to break. Silence gives you the chance to finally face it, to feel it, to let it move through you instead of staying trapped inside. And when you do, something remarkable happens. The thing you were afraid of loses its power. The grief you were running from, when you let yourself feel it, it passes. The anger you were suppressing, when you acknowledge it, it transforms. The fear you were avoiding, when you sit with it, you realize it's just energy. And energy moves, but only if you give it space. Silence is that space. It's not a luxury. It's not something you get to only when life slows down. It's essential. It's medicine. It's the antidote to the constant stimulation, the relentless pace, the exhausting performance of modern life. And it's available to you right now. You don't need to go anywhere. You don't need anything to change. You just need to stop, to breathe,
to let the noise fall away even for a moment. And in that moment, you'll hear it. The quiet voice that's been there all along. The one that knows the way. The one that's been waiting for you to stop shouting long enough to listen. That voice is not your fear. It's not your doubt. It's not the critic or the saboteur. It's your truth. And it's been trying to reach you. But you have to get silent to hear it. So stop reading for a moment. Put this down. Close your eyes. And just breathe. Notice what comes up. Don't judge it. Don't fix it. Just let it be. Because in that letting, in that stillness, you're not doing nothing. You're doing everything. You're reconnecting. You're recalibrating. You're remembering. And that remembering is the foundation of everything that comes next. Because once you know how to access the silence, once you've tasted the clarity it offers, you can't go back to living at full volume. You can't go back to drowning in noise and calling it life. You start to crave the quiet. You start to protect it. You start to build your life around it instead of against it. And from that quiet place, you can finally do the work that actually changes things. You can rewrite the stories. You can rewire the patterns. You can rebuild your life from the inside out. But it all starts here, in the silence.
Chapter 6. The Rewrite Protocol. You've been telling yourself the same story for years. It's the story of who you are, what you're capable of, what you deserve. And every day you live inside that story like it's the only version of reality that exists. But it's not reality. It's a narrative, one you've repeated so many times that it feels like truth. And if you want to change your life, you have to rewrite it. Not by pretending the past didn't happen, not by pasting affirmations over deep wounds, but by consciously choosing a new interpretation, a new meaning, a new way of seeing yourself and your experiences. Because the story you tell yourself about your life is the life you live. Change the story, and you change everything. Here's what most people don't understand. Your past is not fixed. The events happened, but the meaning you assign to them, that's negotiable. You decided what it meant when your parents got divorced. You decided what it meant when you got rejected. You decided what it meant when you failed. And those decisions became your identity. I'm not good enough. I can't trust people. I always mess things up. These aren't facts. They're interpretations. Stories you wrote in moments of pain and confusion. Stories you've been living out ever since. But you can write new ones. Not by denying what happened, but by finding a different meaning. A meaning that empowers you instead of imprisoning you. This is the rewrite protocol. It's not therapy. It's not journaling. It's a deliberate, systematic process of identifying the stories that run your life and replacing them with stories that serve your growth. And it starts with one question. What story am I telling myself that's keeping me stuck? Maybe it's the story that you're damaged because of your childhood. Maybe it's the story that you're not creative, not smart, not capable of success. Maybe it's the story that love never works out for you, that people always leave, that you're destined to struggle. These stories feel true because you've lived them. You have evidence, memories, proof. But here's the thing about proof. You only see what you're looking for. If your story is, I always fail, your brain will scan your entire life for moments that confirm it. And it will find them. It will highlight every mistake, every setback, every disappointment. And it will ignore the rest. It will ignore the times you succeeded, the times you overcame, the times you were stronger than you thought. Not because those moments didn't happen, but because they don't fit the narrative. This is called confirmation bias, and it's running your life. Dr. Carol Dweck, a psychologist at Stanford, spent decades studying how people's beliefs about themselves
shape their outcomes. She found that people with a fixed mindset, those who believe their abilities are set in stone, avoid challenges, give up easily, and plateau early. But people with a growth mindset, those who believe they can develop and improve, embrace challenges, persist through setbacks, and achieve at higher levels. Same circumstances, different stories, different lives. So how do you rewrite the story? Not by lying to yourself, not by pretending everything is fine when it's not. You rewrite by asking better questions. Instead of why does this always happen to me, you ask, what is this teaching me? Instead of why am I so broken, you ask, what strength did I develop because of what I went through? Instead of why can't I ever get it right, you ask, what did I learn from this that will help me next time? These questions don't erase the pain. They transform it. They turn your past from a prison into a foundation. Let me give you a framework, a way to systematically rewrite the stories that are limiting you. Step 1. Identify the core story. What's the narrative you keep coming back to? The belief about yourself that shows up again and again. Write it down. Be brutally honest. I'm not worthy of love. I'm a failure. I'm too damaged to be successful. Don't sugarcoat it. You need to see it clearly before you can change it. Step 2. Find the origin. Where did this story come from? When did you first start believing it? Was it something a parent said? A teacher? A partner? A moment of failure that you internalize as identity? You're not doing this to blame. You're doing this to understand. Because once you see that the story was created in a specific moment, by a specific experience, you realize it's not ultimate truth. It's just what you made that moment mean. Step 3. Challenge the evidence. Your story feels true because you have evidence, so let's examine that evidence. Is it actually true that you always fail? Or have you succeeded in ways you're discounting? Is it actually true that you're not worthy of love? Or have there been people who loved you, even if imperfectly? Is it actually true that you're broken? Or are you a human being who's been through hard things and survived? You're not denying your pain, you're refusing to let it define you. Step 4. Write the new story. Now here's the crucial part. You don't just delete the old story, you replace it. You write a new interpretation, one that acknowledges what happened, but assigns a different meaning. Old story? I'm a failure because I've made so many mistakes. New story? I've made mistakes because I've been willing to try, and every mistake has taught me something that's making me stronger. Old story? I'm damaged because of what happened to me. New story? I've been through pain, and it's made me resilient, empathetic, and capable of handling things most people can't. Old story? Love never works out for me. New story? I haven't found the right relationship yet, but every experience is teaching me what I truly need and who I'm becoming. You see the difference? You're not pretending the past didn't happen. You're changing what it means. And meaning is everything. Step 5. Live the new story. This is where most people stop. They write the new story and then go back to living the old one. Because stories aren't just words, they're actions, choices, patterns. If your new story is, I'm capable, but you keep avoiding challenges, you're still living the old story. If your new story is, I'm worthy of love, but you keep choosing people who treat you poorly, you're still living the old story. You have to act like the new story is true, even when it doesn't feel true yet. You have to make decisions from the new identity, take risks from the new belief, speak from the new narrative. And slowly, your brain catches up. Because your brain doesn't know the difference between a story you inherited and a story you chose. It just knows what you repeat. So repeat the new one. Every time the old story tries to take over, you catch it, You name it, and you choose the new interpretation. This isn't toxic positivity. This isn't pretending. This is conscious authorship. You're taking back the pen. And here's what happens when you do. Your life starts to reflect the new story. Not magically, not overnight, but gradually, inevitably. Because the story you believe shapes what you notice, what you pursue, and what you're willing to endure. Change the story, and you change the trajectory. There's a concept in narrative therapy called reauthoring. It's the idea that you're not stuck with the story you were given. You can rewrite it. You can highlight different moments, emphasize different qualities, draw different conclusions. And in doing so, you literally change who you are. Not because you're a different person, but because identity is fluid. It's not fixed. It's constantly being constructed by the stories you tell. So tell better stories. Not easier ones, not fake ones, better ones. Stories that honor your pain but don't worship it. Stories that acknowledge your past but don't let it dictate your future. Stories that see your scars as proof of survival, not evidence of brokenness. This is the rewrite. And it's not a one-time thing. It's a practice, a daily choice. Because the old story doesn't just disappear. It has momentum. It has history. It will try to come back. And when it does, you don't fight it. You don't shame yourself for thinking it. You just remind yourself, that's the old story. I'm writing a new one now. And you keep writing. One choice at a time. One thought at a time. One action at a time. Until the new story becomes the dominant one. Until it's not something you're trying to believe. It's just what you know. And when that happens, everything shifts. The way you walk into a room, the way you handle rejection, the way you pursue your dreams. Because you're no longer living someone else's narrative. You're living yours. And your story, it's just getting started. But rewriting the story is only part of the transformation. Because stories live in the mind, and transformation requires something deeper. It requires emotion, energy, the raw power that fuels every action you take. And that's what we're diving into next. How to take the fire that's been burning you.
Love what you're hearing? Hit that subscribe button and join our community of audiobook lovers. Your support helps us bring you more amazing stories. Chapter 7. Fire that builds instead of burns. You felt it your whole life. That surge of energy when someone doubts you, when you're afraid, when you're angry, when something inside you screams that this is not acceptable, that things have to change, that you will not stay here. That's fire. And most people spend their lives trying to put it out. They suppress the anger because they were told it's bad. They avoid the fear because it feels like weakness. They push down the passion because it makes them vulnerable. And in the process, they extinguish the very force that could transform their lives. Because fire is not the enemy. Misdirected fire is. Fire that consumes without purpose burns you alive. But fire that's harnessed, channeled, directed with intention, that fire builds empires, creates art, changes the world. And it starts by changing you. Right now, you have energy inside you that you're wasting. Emotional energy. Raw, powerful, primal energy that could be fuel. But instead of using it, you're either drowning in it or running from it. You feel the anger and you lash out, destroying relationships and burning bridges. Or you feel the anger and you swallow it, letting it eat you from the inside. You feel the fear and you freeze, letting it paralyze you. Or you feel the fear and you numb it with distraction, never addressing what it's trying to tell you. You feel the desire and you chase it recklessly, making decisions you regret. Or you feel the desire and you shame it, convincing yourself you don't deserve what you want. Either way, you lose. Because you're treating emotion like the problem when it's actually the solution. Emotion is energy, and energy is neutral. It's not good or bad. It's just power. And power can destroy or create depending on how you wield it. So the question is not, how do I get rid of this feeling? The question is, how do I use it? Let me show you. Think about the last time you felt truly angry. Not annoyed, not irritated, angry. What did you do with it? Did you explode? Did you shut down? Did you vent to someone who couldn't do anything about it? Or did you channel it? Because anger, when directed, is one of the most powerful motivators that exists. It's the fuel behind every revolution, every boundary that's ever been set, every time someone said enough and changed their life. But most people waste it. They let it burn hot and fast, scorching everything in its path, and then they feel ashamed. So they vow never to be angry again, and they lose access to the very energy that could set them free. The same is true for fear. Fear is not a stop sign. It's a spotlight. It shows you what matters, what's at stake, what you care about enough to feel vulnerable. But instead of seeing it as information, you see it as evidence that you shouldn't move forward. You feel fear before the presentation, so you convince yourself you're not ready. You feel fear before the conversation, so you decide it's not the right time. You feel fear before the risk, so you tell yourself it's not worth it. But fear doesn't mean stop. It means pay attention. It means this matters. It means you're on the edge of growth. It means you're about to do something that could change everything. And if you run every time you feel it, you'll never grow. Dr. Anders Ericsson, the psychologist who studied peak performance for decades, found that the difference between people who achieve mastery and people who plateau is not talent. It's their relationship to discomfort. Masters lean into the fear, the frustration, the emotional intensity of pushing past their limits. Everyone else retreats. Same fire, different response, different outcome. So how do you turn fire into fuel? You don't suppress it, you don't indulge it, you transmute it. You take the raw energy and you direct it towards something that matters. Here's the process. Step 1. Feel it fully. When the emotion comes, don't push it away. Don't judge it. Don't try to fix it. Just feel it. Where is it in your body? Your chest? Your throat? Your stomach? What does it feel like? Heat? Pressure? Tightness? Stay with it. Don't run. Don't numb. Just be present with the sensation. Because emotion is not dangerous. Resisting emotion is. When you resist, the energy gets stuck. It lodges in your body. It becomes chronic tension, anxiety, depression. But when you feel it, when you let it move, it completes its cycle. And then it's available as fuel. Step 2, name it. Don't just say, I feel bad. Get specific. Are you angry? Frustrated? Betrayed? Disappointed? Are you afraid? Anxious? Uncertain? Overwhelmed? Are you excited? Eager? Hungry for more? Naming the emotion takes it out of the realm of overwhelm and into the realm of information. Because once you know what you're feeling, you can decide what to do with it.
Step 3, ask what it wants. Every emotion has a message, a purpose, a direction it wants you to move. Anger wants you to set a boundary, to protect something, to say no to what's unacceptable. Fear wants you to prepare, to focus, to take the risk seriously instead of recklessly. Sadness wants you to slow down, to grieve, to let go of what's no longer serving you. Desire wants you to move towards something, to create, to pursue what lights you up. So instead of asking, how do I get rid of this? Ask, what is this trying to tell me? And then listen. Step 4, channel it. Now here's where the magic happens. You take the energy and you direct it. You feel the anger? Use it to have the conversation you've been avoiding, to stand up for yourself, to create the boundary that changes everything. You feel the fear? Use it to prepare, to focus, to sharpen your skills so you walk in ready. You feel the sadness? Use it to release what you've been holding on to make space for something new. You feel the desire? Use it to take action, to build, to create, to move toward what you actually want instead of what's safe. This is alchemy. You're not changing the emotion, you're changing what you do with it. And when you do this consistently, something shifts. You stop being afraid of your feelings. You stop seeing them as evidence that something's wrong with you. You start seeing them as power, as fuel, as the raw material of transformation. Think about the people you admire, the ones who've built something meaningful, who've overcome something impossible, who've changed their lives in ways that seem superhuman. They're not emotionless. They're not calm and detached and above it all. They feel everything, deeply, intensely. But they don't let the fire consume them. They let it forge them. They take the rage at injustice and build movements. They take the fear of failure and turn it into relentless preparation. They take the grief of loss and transform it into art, into purpose, into legacy. They use the fire. And you can too. But it requires a fundamental shift in how you see emotion. You have to stop treating it like a problem to solve and start treating it like energy to harness. You have to stop numbing, suppressing, and avoiding and start feeling, maiming, and channeling. You have to stop being afraid of the intensity and start trusting that you're strong enough to hold it. Because you are. You've survived every emotion you've ever felt. Every wave of anger, every crash of fear, every flood of sadness. You're still here. And the energy that's been burning you, it's been trying to build you the whole time. You just didn't know how to use it. But now you do. So the next time you feel the fire rising, don't run, don't numb, don't explode. Pause. Feel it. Name it. Ask what it wants. And then channel it into the one thing that will actually change your life. Action. Not reactive action, not impulsive action, intentional action. Action that honors the energy, that uses it, that transforms it from chaos into creation. This is how you stop being ruled by your emotions and start being fueled by them. This is how you turn the fire that's been burning you into the force that builds your future. And once you learn this, once you master the art of transmutation, you become unstoppable. Because you're not fighting yourself anymore. You're not at war with your own intensity. You're harnessing it. And there's no limit to what you can build with that kind of power. But here's the thing most people don't realize. Even when you've learned to channel the fire, even when you've rewritten the stories and interrupted the patterns, there's still one force that will try to pull you back. The gravity of old stories. The invisible weight of who you used to be. The pull of familiar patterns. The voice that says, this isn't who you are. You can't sustain this. You'll go back eventually. And if you don't understand how to resist that gravity, all the progress you've made will collapse. That's what we're facing next.
Chapter 8. The Gravity of Old Stories. Change is not a straight line. You know this. You've experienced it.
You have a breakthrough, a moment of clarity. You feel different, lighter, more powerful. And then days later, sometimes hours later, you're right back where you started. The old thought pattern, the old reaction, the old version of yourself you swore you were done with. And you think, I failed. I'm not capable of change. This will never work. But that's not what's happening. You're not failing. You're experiencing gravity. Every identity you've ever held, every story you've ever told yourself, every pattern you've ever run has momentum, weight, history. And that weight doesn't disappear just because you decided to change. It pulls, constantly, subtly, powerfully. It whispers, this new version of you isn't real. The old you is who you actually are. Come back. It's safer here. And if you don't expect that pull, if you don't understand it, it will drag you back down. But here's the truth. The gravity never fully goes away. You don't eliminate it, you learn to resist it. You build enough momentum in the new direction that the pull of the old becomes background noise instead of a controlling force. But it takes awareness and strategy and relentless commitment to the new identity even when everything in you wants to retreat to the familiar. Let me explain how the gravity works. Your brain is wired for consistency. It wants you to be predictable, because predictability equals safety. So when you start acting differently, thinking differently, choosing differently, your brain treats it like a threat. It sends signals. This feels wrong. This isn't you. Stop. And those signals come in the form of thoughts. Who do you think you are? This won't last. You've tried this before and it didn't work. People are going to judge you. These thoughts aren't truth. They're resistance. Your brain is trying to pull you back to homeostasis, to the version of you it recognizes. And if you don't see it for what it is, you'll believe the thoughts. You'll think they're evidence that you're not cut out for this, that you should stop trying. But they're just gravity. And gravity doesn't get to decide. Dr. Maxwell Maltz, a plastic surgeon who became a psychologist, wrote about this in his groundbreaking book, Psycho-Cybernetics. He noticed that when patients got cosmetic surgery, it took them about 21 days to get used to their new face. But the change wasn't just physical, it was psychological. For those 21 days, every time they looked in the mirror, their brain would reject the new image. It would feel foreign, wrong, not them. But if they persisted, if they kept showing up as the new version, their brain eventually accepted it. The new became normal. The same is true for identity. When you start living as a new version of yourself, your brain will reject it for days, for weeks, maybe longer. It will tell you that you're pretending, that this isn't sustainable, that you should go back to what's comfortable. But if you persist, if you keep choosing the new identity even when it feels forced, eventually your brain updates. The new becomes you. But here's the hard part. During that transition, the pull is strongest. The old identity doesn't go quietly. It fights. It shows up as self-sabotage, as doubt, as the sudden urge to do the exact thing you said you wouldn't do anymore. You commit to setting boundaries and suddenly you feel guilty for saying no. You commit to pursuing your dream and suddenly every fear you've ever had floods back. You commit to believing you're worthy and suddenly every memory of rejection plays on repeat. This is not a sign that you're broken, it's a sign that you're changing. And change always encounters resistance. So, how do you resist the gravity? You don't fight it, you expect it, you prepare for it, and you have a protocol for when it shows up. Step 1, recognize the pull. The moment you feel the urge to retreat, to doubt, to go back to the old pattern,
Name it. Out loud if you have to. This is gravity. This is my brain trying to pull me back. This is resistance. Naming it reminds you that it's not truth, it's just a force. And forces can be resisted.
Step 2. Remind yourself why you're changing. Gravity is strong, but purpose is stronger. Why did you decide to change in the first place? What was the cost of staying the same? What's the life you're building worth? Write it down, keep it somewhere visible, and when the pull comes, read it. Remind yourself that the discomfort of growth is temporary. The pain of staying the same is permanent. Step 3. Take one action from the new identity. Don't wait until you feel like the new you. Act like the new you, even when you don't. The old you would retreat. The new you speaks up. The old you would numb. The new you feels it and moves forward anyway. The old you would sabotage. The new you stays committed. One action. That's all it takes to interrupt the pull. Because action rewires the brain faster than anything else. Step 4. Expect the cycle. You will have days where the new identity feels natural, effortless, true. And you will have days where it feels like a lie, where the old you feels more real, where you question everything. Both are part of the process. The key is not to let the hard days convince you that you're not changing. You are. It's just not linear. Progress looks like this. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. 3 steps forward, 1 step back. The gravity will always pull. But as long as you're moving forward more than you're moving back, you're winning. And over time, the new identity gains its own gravity. It becomes the default, the familiar, the version of you that feels most true. But you have to outlast the pull. You have to be willing to feel like an imposter until you're not. You have to be willing to act like someone you're becoming until you become them. You have to be willing to endure the discomfort of transition without retreating. Because on the other side of that discomfort is the life you've been fighting for. The version of you that doesn't doubt. The version of you that doesn't sabotage. The version of you that knows deeply that you are not your past. But that version only emerges if you refuse to let gravity win. So when the old story calls you back, when the familiar pattern tries to pull you in, when your brain screams that this new way is wrong, you stand firm. You remember who you're becoming, and you choose it again and again and again, until choosing it is no longer hard, until it's just who you are. That's how you beat gravity. Not by eliminating it, but by building something stronger. A new identity, a new story, a new momentum. And that momentum, it's about to carry you into something you've been avoiding your whole life. The one thing most people never learn: how to become unmovable.
Chapter 9. Becoming unmovable. You've been blown around your entire life. By other people's opinions, by circumstances, by your own shifting emotions. One day you're committed. The next day you're doubting. One conversation shakes your confidence. One setback makes you question everything. You're like a tree with shallow roots. The slightest wind knocks you off course. And you wonder why you can't build anything that lasts. It's not because you lack potential. It's because you lack stability. You lack the deep, unshakable foundation that lets you stand firm when everything around you is chaos. You lack the ability to be unmovable. And until you develop it, you'll always be at the mercy of forces outside your control. But here's what you need to understand. Being unmovable is not the same as being rigid. Rigid things break. They crack under pressure.
They can't adapt. Unmovable things bend without breaking. They absorb the impact. They stay rooted even when the storm rages. And that's what you're building now. Not a version of yourself that never feels doubt or fear or uncertainty, but a version that feels all of it and doesn't move. A version that knows who you are, what you stand for, and where you're going, and refuses to be swayed. This is the mark of every person who's ever built something meaningful. Every leader, every artist, every person who changed their life against all odds. They became unmovable. Not because they stopped caring what people thought, but because they cared more about their purpose than their comfort. Not because they stopped feeling fear, but because they stopped letting fear make their decisions. Not because they eliminated doubt, but because they moved forward in spite of it. And you can do the same. But it requires something most people never develop: internal authority. Right now, most of your authority is external. You look outside yourself for validation, for direction, for permission. You check what other people think before you make a decision. You wait for someone to tell you you're ready before you move. You need circumstances to be perfect before you commit. And as long as your authority is external, you'll never be unmovable. Because external things are always shifting. People's opinions change. Circumstances fluctuate. Feelings come and go. If your stability depends on any of that, you have no stability at all. But internal authority, that's different. Internal authority means you decide what's true for you. You decide what matters. You decide when you're ready. Not arrogantly, not recklessly, but consciously. You stop outsourcing your power to other people's approval. You stop waiting for permission that's never coming. You stop letting fear or doubt or uncertainty veto your dreams. You claim your authority. And from that place, you become unmovable. So how do you build it? It starts with clarity. Because you can't be unmovable if you don't know what you're standing for. Most people are movable because they're not clear. They don't know what they value. They don't know what they're building. They don't know who they're becoming. So every opinion, every setback, every moment of doubt sends them spinning. But when you're clear, when you know exactly what matters to you and why, you have an anchor. And that anchor holds you steady when everything else is chaos. Ask yourself right now, what do I stand for? Not what I should stand for, not what would sound good. What do I actually value above everything else? Is it integrity? Freedom? Growth? Love? Truth? Impact? Name it. Write it down. Make it concrete. Because this is your foundation. This is what you return to when the noise gets loud. Next, ask yourself, who am I becoming? Not who you were, not who people expect you to be. Who are you building yourself into? What does that version of you believe? How do they think? How do they respond to challenge? Get specific. Because the clearer the vision, the harder it is to be pulled away from it. And finally, ask yourself, what am I willing to endure to get there? Because becoming unmovable means you will be tested. People will doubt you. Circumstances will challenge you. Your own mind will try to talk you out of it. And if you're not willing to endure the discomfort, you'll fold. But if you decide in advance what you're willing to suffer for, you won't be surprised when it shows up.
You'll expect it, and you'll move through it without retreating. This is how you build the foundation. Now let's talk about how you defend it. Because clarity is not enough. You also need boundaries. Boundaries are not walls. They're not about shutting people out or isolating yourself. Boundaries are about protecting your energy, your focus, and your vision from forces that would erode them. And right now, you're probably letting too much in.
You're letting other people's fears shape your decisions. You're letting distractions pull you away from what matters. You're letting your own doubts have equal weight with your deepest knowing. And all of that makes you movable. So you have to build boundaries around your time, around your attention, around your identity. Here's what that looks like. Boundary 1. Protect your inputs. What you consume shapes what you think. What you think shapes what you believe. What you believe shapes what you become. So if you're consuming fear, negativity, distraction, and noise all day, you will be movable. But if you're consuming truth, inspiration, clarity, and purpose, you will be unmovable. This means you have to be ruthless about what you let into your mind. The news that spirals you into anxiety? Boundary. The social media? You'll expect it, and you'll move through it without retreating. This is how you build the foundation. Now let's talk about how you defend it. Because clarity is not enough. You also need boundaries. Boundaries are not walls. They're not about shutting people out or isolating yourself. Boundaries are about protecting your energy, your focus, and your vision from forces that would erode them. And right now, you're probably letting too much in. You're letting other people's fears shape your decisions. You're letting distractions pull you away from what matters. You're letting your own doubts have equal weight with your deepest knowing. And all of that makes you movable. So you have to build boundaries around your time, around your attention, around your identity. Here's what that looks like. Boundary 1. Protect your inputs. What you consume shapes what you think. What you think shapes what you believe. What you believe shapes what you become. So if you're consuming fear, negativity, distraction, and noise all day, you will be movable. But if you're consuming truth, inspiration, clarity, and purpose, you will be unmovable. This means you have to be ruthless about what you let into your mind. The news that spirals you into anxiety? Boundary. The social media that makes you compare and despair? Boundary. The people who drain your energy and reinforce your doubts? Boundary. You don't owe your attention to anything that weakens your foundation. Boundary 2. Protect your energy. Energy is finite, and most people spend it like it's unlimited. They say yes to things they don't care about. They engage in arguments that don't matter. They give their best to people who don't value it. And then they wonder why they have nothing left for their dreams. Being unmovable means being selective. It means saying no more than you say yes. It means prioritizing ruthlessly. It means protecting your energy for what actually matters. Not because you're selfish, because you're intentional. Boundary 3. Protect your vision. Not everyone gets to have an opinion about your life. Not everyone gets to speak into your decisions. Not everyone's doubt gets to occupy space in your mind. You have to decide whose voice matters, and it should be a very short list. People who've been where you're going, people who believe in you unconditionally, people who see your potential even when you can't. Everyone else, their opinion is noise, and noise doesn't get to move you. Now here's the hardest part about becoming unmovable. You will be misunderstood. People will see your boundaries and call you cold. They'll see your clarity and call you arrogant. They'll see your commitment and call you obsessed. And if you need everyone to understand you, you'll compromise. You'll soften your boundaries to make them comfortable. You'll dim your vision to fit in. You'll move to avoid conflict. And you'll lose yourself in the process. But if you can make peace with being misunderstood, if you can let people think what they think without needing to defend yourself, you become free. Because the only approval you need is your own. The only validation that matters is the alignment between who you are and who you're becoming. The only measure of success is whether you're staying true to your values, your vision, your path. Everything else is just noise, and unmovable people don't let noise dictate their direction. Dr. Brené Brown, a research professor who spent decades studying courage and vulnerability, found that people who live with the most integrity and the least regret have one thing in common. They know who they are, and they refuse to betray that for comfort or approval. They'd rather be disliked for being authentic than loved for being fake. They'd rather stand alone in their truth than blend in with a lie. They'd rather endure the discomfort of growth than the slow death of compromise. That's what it means to be unmovable. And it's not something you arrive at once and keep forever. It's something you choose. Again, and again, and again. Every time someone questions you and you stay the course. Every time circumstances shift and you hold your vision. Every time your own doubt whispers and you move forward anyway. You're choosing to be unmovable. And over time, that choice becomes your identity. You stop being the person who's easily swayed. You become the person who stands firm. Not because you're stubborn, because you're rooted. Not because you're closed off, because you're clear. Not because you don't care, because you care so much about what matters that you refuse to be distracted by what doesn't. And that clarity, that rootedness, that refusal to be moved by anything that doesn't align with your truth, that's power. Real power. The kind that doesn't need to announce itself. The kind that doesn't need to defend itself. The kind that just is. And when you carry that power, when you walk through the world unmovable, something shifts. People feel it. Opportunities find you. Your life starts to organize itself around your clarity instead of your chaos. Because the world responds to certainty. And you've become certain. Not about everything, but about what matters. And that's enough. But here's what most people don't realize. Even when you become unmovable, even when you've built the foundation and set the boundaries, there's still one resource that will determine whether you win or lose. One currency that, when mismanaged, will destroy everything you've built. Attention. And that's where we're going next.
You think time is your most valuable resource. It's not. Attention is. Because you can have all the time in the world and waste every second of it if your attention is fractured, scattered, and constantly hijacked by forces you don't control. Right now, your attention is being stolen by notifications designed to trigger dopamine, by algorithms engineered to keep you scrolling, by a world that profits from your distraction. And every second you give away is a second you're not building the life you say you want. You're not stupid. You know this. But knowing and doing are not the same thing. You know you should focus, but you check your phone anyway. You know you should work on what matters, but you get pulled into what's urgent, what's easy, what numbs the discomfort of actually creating something. And at the end of the day, the week, the year, you wonder why you haven't made progress. It's not because you don't have talent. It's because you don't have attention. Or more accurately, you have attention. You're just spending it on things that don't matter. And attention, like money, is a currency. You can invest it or waste it. Invested, and it compounds. It builds momentum. It creates results that change your life. Wasted, and you end up broke. Not financially, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually. You end up exhausted, with nothing to show for it. So the question is not,
how do I get more time? The question is, where is my attention going, and is it worth the cost? Because everything you focus on grows. Everything you ignore withers. Focus on fear, and fear becomes your reality. Focus on distraction, and your life becomes a blur. Focus on what you're building, and it becomes inevitable. But most people have no idea where their attention is actually going. They think they're focused, but they're not. They're toggling, switching, fragmenting their awareness across a dozen tabs, 100 thoughts, 1,000 tiny interruptions. And fragmented attention produces fragmented results. Dr. Gloria Mark, a professor at UC Irvine, has spent years studying attention and productivity. She found that it takes an average of 23 minutes to fully refocus after an interruption. 23 minutes. That means every time you check your phone, every time you respond to a notification, every time you let your mind wander to something unrelated, you're not losing a few seconds. You're losing half an hour of deep focus. And if you're interrupting yourself every few minutes, you're never actually focused at all. You're in a constant state of shallow engagement, skimming the surface of everything, mastering nothing. And shallow engagement produces shallow results. You can't build something meaningful with scattered attention. You can't solve complex problems with a distracted mind. You can't create, connect, or transform when your awareness is constantly being pulled away. So if you want to change your life, you have to reclaim your attention. Not as a nice idea, as a non-negotiable. Here's how. Step 1. Audit your attention. Before you can change where your attention goes, you have to see where it's going. For one day, track it. Every hour, write down what you focused on. Not what you intended to focus on, what you actually focused on. How much time on your phone, on social media, on news, on worry. How much time on what you're building, on relationships that matter, on growth. Be honest, brutally honest, because you can't manage what you don't measure. And most people, when they actually track their attention, are horrified. They realize they're spending hours on things they don't care about, and minutes on things they claim matter most. That's the wake-up call. Step 2. Eliminate the leaks. Attention leaks slowly, one notification at a time, one scroll at a time, one just 5 minutes that turns into an hour. And most of those leaks are invisible. You don't notice them draining you until you're empty. So you have to plug them. Turn off notifications, all of them. If something is truly urgent, people will find you. Delete apps that steal your focus. If you need them, you can reinstall them. But make it harder to default to distraction. Create barriers between you and your phone. Put it in another room when you're working. Leave it in the car when you're with people that matter. These sound extreme. They're not. They're essential. Because your attention is under assault. And if you don't defend it, you will lose it. Step 3. Protect deep focus. Deep focus is where transformation happens. It's where you solve problems, create breakthroughs, and build things that last. But deep focus is rare because it requires sustained, uninterrupted attention. And sustained, uninterrupted attention is exactly what the modern world is designed to prevent. So you have to fight for it. Block time. Not just any time, sacred, non-negotiable time, where your only job is to focus on one thing. No multitasking, no checking email, no quick interruptions. One task, full attention, for as long as it takes.
Start with 30 minutes, if that's all you can manage. Then build to an hour, then 2.
Because the muscle of attention is like any other muscle. It atrophies from disuse, and it strengthens with practice. The more you practice deep focus, the easier it becomes. The more you can accomplish in less time. The more you build momentum instead of starting over every day. Step 4. Choose your objects of attention. Not everything deserves your focus. Most things don't. So you have to be ruthless about what you let in. What you focus on becomes your reality. So if you're focusing on problems, drama, and what's wrong, that's the life you'll build. But if you're focusing on solutions, growth, and what you're creating, that's the life you'll build. This doesn't mean you ignore problems. It means you don't give them more attention than they deserve. You acknowledge them, you address them, and then you move your focus back to what matters. Because whatever you give your attention to, you're feeding. Feed the fear, and it grows. Feed the vision, and it grows. You get to choose. Step 5. Practice single tasking. Multitasking is a myth. Your brain doesn't actually do two things at once. It switches rapidly between them. And every switch costs energy, costs clarity, costs momentum. So stop trying to do everything at once. Do one thing, fully, completely, then move to the next. When you're with someone, be with them, not on your phone, not planning the next thing. Present. When you're working, work, not half working while scrolling, not pretending to focus while your mind is somewhere else. Actually working. When you're resting, rest, not guilt resting while thinking about what you should be doing, actually resting. Single tasking is not slower, it's faster, because you're actually completing things instead of perpetually half doing a dozen things. And completion creates momentum. Here's what happens when you reclaim your attention. You stop feeling scattered. You stop ending the day exhausted with nothing to show for it. You start building, creating, producing results that actually matter. You start thinking more clearly, solving problems faster, seeing opportunities you were too distracted to notice. You start feeling more present, more alive, more like yourself. Because when your attention is yours, your life is yours. But when your attention is owned by distractions, algorithms, and other people's agendas, you're just a passenger. And passengers don't change their lives. Drivers do. So take the wheel. Decide where your attention goes. Protect it like the precious, finite resource it is. Because you don't get infinite attention. You get what you have right now, and how you spend it today shapes what your life looks like tomorrow. Spend it on what doesn't matter, and you'll build a life that doesn't matter. Spend it on what you're becoming, and you'll become it. It's that simple and that hard. But you've already done the hard part. You've seen the patterns, you've rewritten the stories, you've learned to channel the fire, resist the gravity, and become unmovable. Now you just have to focus that power, to aim it, to sustain it, to let it compound. And when you do, something extraordinary happens. The thoughts that used to control you become thoughts that serve you. The mind that was your prison becomes your greatest tool. And the life you've been fighting for, it stops being a distant dream and starts being your reality. But there's one final shift, one last transformation. The moment when thoughts stop being the enemy or the master and become what they were always meant to be, servants. And that's where we're going next.
Chapter 11. When Thoughts Become Servants. There's a moment in every transformation where the relationship changes, where the thing that once controlled you becomes the thing you command, where the voice that dictated your every move becomes just one voice among many, and you get to decide whether to listen. That moment is when thoughts become servants, not enemies, not masters, servants. Tools you use to build the life you want instead of weapons used against you. And this is the shift most people never make. They spend their whole lives either dominated by their thoughts or at war with them, fighting, suppressing, trying desperately to think positive while the negative loops run wild underneath. But you don't have to fight your thoughts, and you don't have to obey them. You just have to put them in their proper place. Because thoughts are not you, they're tools. And like any tool, their value depends on how you use them. A hammer can build a house or break a window. The hammer doesn't decide, you do. Your thoughts can build your future or destroy your peace. The thoughts don't decide, you do. And once you truly understand that, once you internalize it at a level deeper than intellectual agreement, everything changes. You stop being a victim of your mind. You become the architect of it. Right now, your thoughts are running the show. They tell you what to fear, what to want, what to believe about yourself. And you listen, automatically, unconsciously. A thought says, you can't do this, and you don't do it. A thought says, they don't like you, and you withdraw. A thought says, this is too hard, and you quit. You're not making conscious decisions. You're following orders. But what if you stopped? What if the next time a thought showed up, you evaluated it like you would advice from a stranger? Would you take advice from someone who only sees problems, who catastrophizes everything, who's wrong most of the time? Of course not. But that's exactly what you're doing when you blindly follow your thoughts. So here's the shift. You stop treating thoughts as truth and start treating them as suggestions. And like any suggestion, you get to assess it. Is this thought helpful? Is it accurate? Does it move me toward who I'm becoming or away from it? If yes, you use it. If no, you dismiss it. Not with force, not with shame, you just let it pass. Because thoughts don't need your permission to arrive, but they need your agreement to stay. And when you stop agreeing with every thought that crosses your mind, you take back control. Let me show you what this looks like in practice. A thought shows up. I'm going to fail. The old you would spiral, feel the fear, let it stop you. But the new you, the you who's learned to see thoughts as servants, you pause. You notice the thought, and you ask, is this helping me or hurting me? It's hurting you. So you respond. Thank you for trying to protect me, but I'm not interested in that story right now. I'm moving forward anyway. And then you act. Not because the fear is gone, but because you're no longer taking orders from it. Another thought, no one cares about what I have to say. The old you would believe it. Stay silent, play small. The new you notices it, evaluates it. Is that true? Or is that an old story trying to keep me safe? It's an old story, so you dismiss it. I'm not speaking for everyone. I'm speaking for the people who need to hear this, and that's enough. And then you speak. Do you see the difference? You're not at war with the thought. You're not pretending it doesn't exist. You're just refusing to make your decisions. You're using your thoughts as data, not destiny. And that changes everything. Because when thoughts are servants, you can think strategically. You can use your mind to plan, to solve problems, to create. But when thoughts are masters, they just run loops, the same fears, the same doubts, the same stories that keep you stuck. Dr. Stephen Hayes, the founder of acceptance and commitment therapy, calls this cognitive diffusion. It's the practice of stepping back from your thoughts and seeing them as mental events, not facts. He found that people who practice diffusion experience less anxiety, less depression, and greater psychological flexibility.
Not because their thoughts changed, but because their relationship to their thoughts changed. They stopped fusing with the narrative. They stopped believing every story their mind told. And they started choosing which thoughts to follow and which to let go. This is the skill that separates people who change your lives from people who just think about changing their lives. Because everyone has the same kinds of thoughts: fear, doubt, insecurity, resistance. But some people let those thoughts run them, and other people run those thoughts. And the only difference is practice. The practice of noticing, evaluating,
choosing, over and over until it becomes automatic, until your default response to a limiting thought is not belief, but curiosity. Interesting. Where is this coming from? Is this useful? What would I do if I didn't believe this? And then acting from that place. Here's what most people get wrong. They think mastery means never having negative thoughts. It doesn't. Mastery means having the thought and not being controlled by it. It means the thought can show up and you can acknowledge it and then do what you were going to do anyway. Because the thought is just a passenger. You're the driver. And passengers don't get to steer. Now let's talk about how to train your thoughts to serve you instead of sabotage you. Because your mind is trainable. It learns from what you reinforce. If you reinforce fear by avoiding everything that scares you, your mind learns fear means stop, and it will produce more fear to keep you safe. But if you reinforce courage by acting despite the fear, your mind learns fear is just information. We can handle this. And over time, the fear loses its power. The same is true for every thought pattern. Reinforce the doubt by quitting every time it shows up, and your mind learns to doubt everything. Reinforce the vision by moving toward it even when it feels impossible, and your mind learns to believe. So you have to be intentional about what you reinforce. Practice 1. Thought labeling. When a thought shows up, label it. This is a fear thought. This is a shame thought. This is a doubt thought. Labeling creates distance. It reminds you that you're not the thought. You're the one noticing it. And from that distance, you can choose whether to engage with it or let it pass. Practice 2. Thought testing. Don't just accept thoughts as truth. Test them. Is this actually true or does it just feel true? What evidence supports this? What evidence contradicts it? What would I tell a friend who had this thought? Most of the time when you test a thought, you realize it's not based on reality. It's based on fear, on old conditioning, on worst-case scenarios that almost never happen. And once you see that, the thought loses its grip. Practice 3. Thought replacement. When you dismiss a limiting thought, don't just leave a void. Replace it. Not with a fake affirmation, with a true, more useful thought. Instead of, I can't do this, try, I haven't done this yet, but I'm capable of learning. Instead of, I'm not enough, try, I'm growing, and that's what matters. Instead of, this will never work, try, I don't know if this will work, but I'm willing to find out. You're not lying to yourself. You're choosing a thought that serves you. And over time, those thoughts become the default. Practice 4. Thought appreciation. Not all thoughts are enemies. Some are allies. When a thought helps you, when it generates clarity or motivation or insight, acknowledge it. Thank you. That's useful. Because your mind learns from positive reinforcement, and when you appreciate the helpful thoughts, you get more of them. This is how you train your mind to work for you instead of against you. Not by force, not by control, by relationship. By treating your thoughts like a team you're coaching, not a dictator you're overthrowing. And the more you practice, the more natural it becomes. You stop being surprised by negative thoughts. You expect them. You can welcome them as opportunities to practice. Because every time you notice a thought and choose differently, you're strengthening the neural pathway of conscious choice. You're rewiring your brain to serve your vision instead of your fear. And over time, you become someone who thinks differently. Not because you're forcing it, because you've trained it. Your thoughts start to align with who you're becoming. They start to support your growth instead of sabotage it. And the energy you used to waste fighting your own mind, you redirect it toward creation, toward connection, toward building the life you've been imagining. Because when your thoughts are servants, your energy is yours. Your focus is yours. Your life is yours. And that's when the final transformation happens. Not the one where you escape your thoughts, the one where you use them to create something that outlasts you, something that matters, something that echoes, the life you were always meant to live. And that's where we're going next. The final chapter, the culmination of everything you've learned, everything you've practiced, everything you've become. The moment where you step fully into the person you've been building and live the life you were always meant to live.
Chapter 12. The life you were always meant to live. You've been preparing for this moment your entire life. Not the moment you read these words, the moment you decide that everything changes. That the old version of you, the one who was controlled by thoughts, driven by fear, trapped in patterns, that version ends here. And the new version, the one who sees clearly, chooses consciously, and moves with purpose, that version begins now. This is not the end of the journey. It's the beginning of the one that actually matters. Because everything up until now has been preparation. You've been learning the tools, building the foundation, rewiring the patterns. But tools don't change your life. Using them does. And the life you were always meant to live is waiting on the other side of one decision. The decision to stop preparing and start living. To stop waiting until you feel ready and start acting like you already are. To stop letting your thoughts run the show and start running them. This is the moment. Not someday. Not when circumstances are perfect. Not when the fear is gone. Now. So let me ask you something. What would your life look like if you actually lived everything you've learned? If you caught every limiting thought before it controlled you? If you channeled every emotion into fuel instead of letting it burn you? If you stayed unmovable in your vision no matter what the world threw at you? If you protected your attention like the sacred resource it is? If you treated your thoughts as servants and used them to build instead of being used by them? What would be different? Your relationships, your work, your sense of self? Would you finally have the conversation you've been avoiding? Would you finally start the thing you've been putting off? Would you finally stop settling for a life that feels small and start building one that feels true? You know the answer. You've always known. The only question is whether you're willing to act on it. Because knowledge without action is just entertainment. And you didn't come this far to be entertained. You came to transform. And transformation requires you to do something you've never done before. Trust yourself completely. Not the version of yourself that doubts, not the version that's afraid, not the version that's been conditioned to play small, the version that's been whispering to you this whole time, the one that knows what you're capable of, the one that's been waiting for you to finally listen. That version, it's been right all along. And it's time to let it lead. Here's what most people do at this point. They get inspired. They feel motivated. They commit to change. And then they go back to their lives and do nothing. Because inspiration without implementation is just a feeling that fades. But you're not most people. You've done the work. You've seen the patterns. You've learned the tools. Now you just have to use them. Every single day. Not perfectly, not without struggle, but consistently. Because the life you were meant to live is not built in one grand moment. It's built in 1,000 small ones. The moment you notice a limiting thought and choose differently. The moment you feel the fear and move forward anyway. The moment you protect your attention instead of giving it away. The moment you set a boundary, speak your truth, take the risk, stay the course. Those moments, they compound. One choice leads to another.
One action creates momentum. One day of living intentionally becomes a week, a month, a year. And before you know it, you're not the person you were when you started. You're the person you were always meant to become. But here's the part no one tells you. Even when you become that person, the old thoughts will still show up. The doubt, the fear, the voice that says you're not enough, not ready, not capable. It doesn't go away. It just stops being in charge. Because you've trained yourself to see it for what it is, an echo, a ghost, a residue of who you used to be. And echoes don't get to make decisions. You do. So when the voice shows up, you'll smile, you'll thank it for trying, and you'll move forward anyway. Because that's what people who live the life they were meant to live do.
They don't wait for permission. They don't wait for certainty. They don't wait for the fear to disappear. They act. They build. They become. And the life follows. Now let me give you a challenge. Not someday. Not when you're ready. Today. In the next 24 hours, do one thing you've been avoiding because a thought told you not to. Have the conversation. Send the message. Take the first step. Not because it's easy, because it's true. Because it aligns with who you're becoming. And then tomorrow, do it again. And the day after that. Not because you have to, because you can. Because you've reclaimed your power. And power unused is power wasted. You didn't go through all of this. The awareness, the rewiring, the resistance, the transformation, just to go back to living small. You did it so you could finally live fully. So you could stop being a passenger in your own life and become the driver. So you could stop wondering what's possible and start proving it. And the proof is not in what you think. It's in what you do. So do it. Build the business. Write the book. Leave the relationship that's draining you. Start the one that scares you. Move to the city, quit the job, set the boundary, speak the truth. Whatever it is that you've been telling yourself you'll do someday, do it now. Because someday is not a day of the week. It's a lie you tell yourself to avoid the discomfort of change. And you don't avoid discomfort anymore. You walk straight into it. You use it. You let it forge you into something stronger. That's who you are now. Not the person who's controlled by thoughts, the person who controls them. Not the person who's ruled by fear, the person who uses it as fuel. Not the person who waits, the person who acts. And when you live from that place, when you show up every day as that person, your life transforms. Not because circumstances change, because you change. And when you change, everything else adjusts. The opportunities find you. The people who match your new frequency show up. The life you've been imagining becomes the life you're living. Not perfectly, not without challenge, but truly. And that's all that matters. So here's what I want you to remember. You are not your thoughts. You never were. You are the space in which they appear, the awareness that notices them, the power that chooses what to do with them. And that power, it's been yours all along. You just forgot. But now you remember. And remembering is everything, because once you remember who you actually are, not the story, not the fear, not the pattern, but the conscious, powerful, infinite being beneath all of that, nothing can stop you. Not your past, not your circumstances, not the voice that says you can't. Because you can. And you will. Not because I'm telling you. Because you've proven it to yourself. Every time you chose differently, every time you resisted the gravity, every time you channeled the fire instead of letting it burn you, you proved it. And now all that's left is to live it. To wake up every day and ask, who am I becoming today? And then become that person in your choices, in your actions, in the way you think, speak,
and move through the world. That's the life you were always meant to live. Not the one where everything is easy, the one where everything is true. Where your thoughts serve your vision, where your emotions fuel your growth, where your past informs your wisdom but doesn't dictate your future. Where you are fully, unapologetically, powerfully yourself. And that life, it's not waiting for you somewhere in the distance. It's here, right now, in this moment. The only question is, will you claim it? Will you step into it, own it, live it? Or will you go back to the old patterns, the old stories, the old version of yourself that was safe, but small? The choice is yours. It always has been. And I think you already know what you're going to choose. Because you didn't come this far to turn back now. You came to transform. And transformation is not a destination. It's a decision. A decision you make right now, and then again tomorrow, and the day after that, until the decision becomes your identity, and your identity becomes your life. The life you were always meant to live. So go live it. Control your thoughts, change your life, and become everything you were always meant to be.